Hi! I am so glad you're here. My project schedule has once again shifted, and the project I was going to do this week, I don't have any of the materials for yet, so I needed to think of something quick. So we're gonna do a winter sewing vlog. This is very full. I should drink some of this down. And I've thought about it for about 20 seconds, and I think I know what we're gonna make. Last year, I wanted to make some throw pillows for my couch that are Christmas themed because I realized I don't really have any. I have jack-o'-lanterns for Halloween, I have some fun fall printed ones that I made last year, and I have strawberries for the spring and summer, but I don't have anything for winter. And I started to make one in the shape of a Christmas tree last year, and I never finished it. I basically cut it out, sewed the ornaments on, and then just abandoned ship. I don't know why, but I did. So I'd like to make some throw pillows, and to fill them we'll probably use some of my soft scraps that I keep from all of my sewing projects, so that's one item. I also would like to make a tree skirt for my Christmas tree. I don't have one, and I hate looking at the little wire stand thing, so we need to cover it up with something fun and cute, and I think I have a fun idea of what I'd like to do. Because it's fairy themed, I thought it would be fun to make it a mossy Christmas tree skirt. Or what if it was a little pond? It might be cool if it was like, if the Christmas, well, I don't know if that really goes with everything else. If the Christmas, if the Christmas tree skirt is like blue, and then I can put the scraps from my living room rugs all over it, like mossy algae patches maybe. Ooh. Or we just make it a mossy tree skirt and call it a day. Either way, need to make a Christmas tree skirt, but for now, we'll start with the pillows. The incomplete pillow was easy to find as I'd put it away with my decorations, and it came with a little surprise toy I'd started to make for Pearl. All that really needed to be done for this was to sew it right sides together and stuff it. I don't know why I couldn't finish this last year, there was not that much left to do. I snipped the rounded edges of the tree so that it would curve more easily and put those pieces in with the rest of the soft scraps that I have to fill the pillow. When I turned it inside out, the star looked a little wonky, so I probably should have added it after turning it all inside out, but it looked good enough not to undo it all, so I moved on. My mom recently thrifted all of this stuffing and gifted it to me, though I realized that 2 of the 3 bags are continuous sheets of fake snow, so I set those aside to be used for something else, and used this old bag of polyfill that apparently was a Joann's brand? I don't know, but it looks old. One of my favorite things about using my soft scraps as stuffing is seeing remnants of projects past. It reminds me of the law of superposition in geology, where typically the oldest materials will be found on the bottom layer and the youngest on the top, unless of course it has been moved due to plate tectonics or some other natural phenomena, but you'd still be able to tell by identifying the materials and comparing it. And this is a sewing video. For Pearl's toys, I typically only use polyfill though, just in case she rips it open one day, because she's part rat terrier and she likes to shake her prey. Once the tiny tree was stuffed with fluff and the big tree was stuffed with a mixture of polyfill and scraps, all that was left was to ladder stitch them both closed. Then the tree pillow was done, although I did realize that the couch would look a bit bare if I only had one pillow on it, so I decided to rummage through my big bag of felt and flannel to see if I had pieces big enough to make another pillow. That's when I found the other pillow I had apparently also started making last year. This one was supposed to be an ornament, so I continued with that plan. I sewed the circles together, stuffed it with more scraps and polyfill, then added all the details. If it didn't have a little gold topper on one side to hold the hook, it'd look more like Rudolph's nose, so I had to add that. And to add more of a cartoonish detail, I also stitched on a little shine mark, and I hand sewed everything on just to make it easier. And just like that, both of our pillows were done, so it was time to move on to the tree skirt. I couldn't stop thinking about the skirt being a little pond or puddle, so I looked through my blue fabrics to see which would be the best option for water. I almost used the dress I scrapped from my Agatha Harkness project, but I wasn't sure there would be enough to cut a circular skirt from it, so I moved on to other options. The sequins and shiny blue might have been fun to be the water, but I didn't want to use such nice fabrics for this project, so I chose this polyester blue fabric I got from the thrift store. I cut this out just as I would a circle skirt for myself, but with a tiny itty bitty 2-inch waist, and made it 36 inches long. Then I got out my rug scraps from my living room project and made sure I could pull the fuzzy fabric from the foam before moving on. I decided to crochet a textured trim for the outer edge using these fuzzy yarns I was given years ago. And before sewing it along the edge of the skirt, I first hemmed the inner circle and the open edges, adding Velcro to it as well to keep it together. I zigzag stitched the trim along the edge, and then it was time for the fun part: decorating. At first I was going to sew all of the fuzzy bits on, but the more I worked with this material, the more I realized how much of a nightmare that would be. So to speed things up, I just decided to hot glue it all on instead. I know, it's a sewing video, but I needed to keep my sanity intact. After just a few pieces, it hit me just how long this would take, so I decided to continue this the next day when I got right to work. The mask here was very helpful because the fuzz got absolutely everywhere, and the last place I wanted it was in my nose and lungs. It had already gotten in my eye, and that was not fun. I tried to add some shine to the water with some leftover green material from Halloween, but there wasn't a ton left, so I put it on in curvy patches to instead be green algae clumps or something to that effect. Then I took the foam from the rug scraps and made some mushrooms by hot gluing them into various tube shapes and adding circular-ish caps to the tops. Because I painted the foam, they would need a while to dry because it was like a sponge, so I set those aside. By the end of that day, I wasn't really super pleased with how this tree skirt looked, so I decided I was done for the day, but not with the skirt. The next day, I decided to add some more texture and moss to the tree skirt by chain stitching even more of those fuzzy yarns into strips that could then be shaped any way necessary to fill in some of the space. Once those were done, I once again cut up several pieces of the rug scraps and continued gluing them on. The idea was to cover as much of the skirt as possible and with as many textures as I could figure out. I even glued some of the foam separately and pinched pieces out of the surface to make it look more rough. By that point, the mushrooms were done, so I scattered them around the greenery, but decided it definitely needed some more mushrooms and painted several more to put on the skirt. I also made a few little felt flowers, painted those, and the foam patches, and once everything was dry, I added the new mushrooms. I liked the way it looked so much more than before, so I called it good. That's when I was given this tablecloth, and since we're doing a sewing video, I decided to tack this project onto the end here and turn that tablecloth into a dress. After toning down my earrings, I got to work cutting out the pattern. I'm using the top and sleeves of the Daphne dress pattern by Hubbading, and this skirt pattern. The tablecloth was 70 by 70 inches, I believe, so I knew there wouldn't be enough to make the full Daphne dress with all the layers. And to be honest, there was barely enough to make the patterns work as it was, but I did manage to squeeze everything in there, even adding a couple of inches to the skirt length. I also remembered to add pockets, which I made with an old duvet cover. Then it was just a matter of putting it all together. Because the tablecloth has a bit of a loose weave, which can lead to fraying, and that's also why I made the pockets out of polycotton linens instead of the tablecloth, I protected all of the edges on my serger and started putting it all together, after reloading my bobbin, that is. I added elastic to the wrists on the sleeves, and as a kindness to myself, instead of hemming the skirt, I covered the edge with some lace trim. But after putting everything together, I noticed that the lines in the front, which I thought I had aligned, were in fact off by just a little bit. And I didn't feel like taking it apart to fix it, so I just used some mistletoe trim that I've had for years in my stash to hopefully make the misalignment less noticeable by just covering up where they don't meet. I thought if it just looks interrupted, it won't be that noticeable, right? And while I was at it, I added the rest of the trim to the front neckline just for fun. After that, everything was done, so it's time for the reveal. I like everything. I really like the pillows. They're very dense because of the scrap materials, but I kind of like that in a pillow, or at least a throw pillow, not a sleeping pillow. I think I could use a few more. I think if I had more material, I would make more, maybe like a gingerbread man and a snowman maybe would be cute, but I don't have the materials to make those, so maybe next year, because we'll definitely have more fabric scraps to stuff them with by the time next December rolls around. The tree skirt, I think, turned out better than I thought it would. Halfway through, I was a little worried because I didn't like how it looked at all. I wish I had used a different shade of blue. I think it was just too vibrantly blue to be pond water, and I wish I had had more of a teal greenish blue. I honestly considered taking apart my Bridgerton dress to use that material because of how it like shifts under the light, but I practiced restraint and did not take it apart. I just made it work. I do think if I had painted the blue a little bit, it would have added some more water-like features. I don't know. I think it might still be a work in progress, and I might end up just covering the rest of it with more moss and potentially add some more mushrooms around the edges of it to make it a fairy ring as well, a fairy circle. So I like where it's at for now, because I think I could have gone a lot longer adding things and changing things. So I think my brain was like, we gotta stop. We just gotta stop. And the dress is super cute. I'm gonna be wearing that a lot this month, I'm sure, because it's very comfortable. And as you saw, I also made Pearl a little shirt thing out of the extras. I also made her a bandana version. She doesn't always like wearing the jackets, but she doesn't mind bandanas. So the jackets are really only for special occasions. The last day I was working on everything, making the dress, I found a tablecloth that I had set aside a little while back to specifically be for something this month, but I couldn't squeeze it in because I have a really big project planned for this next week, and I gotta go get started on that right away. So to wrap this up, I like everything I made. And if you do too, you can let me know by hitting the like button. And if you want to see what I'm doing next and join the channel, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to know when I post, hit the notification bell. YouTube will let you know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!